And the last game we have for this episode of the MeepleCore podcast is Champions of Hara.
Designed by Walter Barber, Ian VanNest, and Andrew Zimmermann. The artist is Stephen Gibson, Hannah Kennedy, and Jason Piperberg. Published by Greenbrier Games.
Cool. And basically, we've talked about Champions of Hara when the Kickstarter was going on, because Greenbrier had sent us the Kickstarter version of the game, or prototype, or whatever, Kickstarter prototype. And now they've sent us the actual copy of the game, and we've played it a bunch of times, and we're going to talk about our thoughts on it. And so to quickly go over the rules, I'm not going to cover everything because there's a lot of rules. It's not unnecessarily talk about all of them. But essentially, it is a game that is, you can play it PvP, you can play it PvE. The way the game actually works, if you want to play the full experience, you play through a story arc where all the players play PvP at first. The player who wins the PvP match then gets to pick one of the scenarios for the character that they pick, and then you play through that and beat it or whatever. So it goes from PvP to PvE. We kind of did that, but not really. We ended up picking a scenario that didn't have anything to do with the character who won, but whatever. Or at least that time that we played. And then, the other times we have played this, it's just one-offs, which it says in the book you can do.
Right.
So I actually think that's better, but we'll come to all that. We'll come to that in a minute. So in Champions of Hara, basically each person gets a character. The character will have a set of cards. You have a yellow card that everybody has. It's called Dash. It allows you to move. And then you have a red, blue, and a green card. The idea behind the game is you're trying to run around on this hexagon grid. Basically, it's a bunch of worlds that are stitched together. And it looks like a honeycomb. So it's like in the middle honeycomb, you put a deck of cards. And then there's in the middle hexagon, you put a deck of cards. And then there's hexagons all around it. That represents one world. And then you put 6 of those together around one big thing that's the dojo. So it's a big hexagon grid, so to speak, but, every couple of spaces it's a deck of cards for that world. And then those cards are going to be flipped out on top of the different spaces around that world to show that there's events going on there or there are monsters to fight. On your turn, players are going to take a turn, and then, excuse me. Well, so you play over a course of days, right? There's 6 days to the game. Each one has a dawn and the dusk. In the dawn, basically, you're going to flip over the top card of each world. Well, not flip it over, but you're going to put the top card of each world into the slot number 1, which will represent that it's day 1. And this is going to be either an event or a monster. If it's an event, it's face down. If it's a monster, it's face up. So the event, you don't know what's going to happen when you land on it, but the monster, you know what you're going up against. Then each player is going to get a turn in turn order, and you are simply going to have 3 actions, or activations, rather. An activation is basically playing a card from your hand, but each card also has a on-board effect, meaning that if you play it from the board, so you play it out of your hand, it goes to the board. You can only use each card once each round, so you're done with that card for right now. Well, on my future turn, I can play a card that's on the board and then bring it back to my hand. Usually that effect is more powerful than the card that you play from your hand. You get 3 actions, essentially. So I can play a card to move, I can play a card to do some damage, I can play another card that does some damage and moves me away, or whatever the case may be. And then at the end of the round, if you are playing PvE, the bad guy gets to do stuff. And then you're done with that. The first part of a day, you go on to the dusk, in which there's a dusk deck, and you will roll the number of players plus 1. That's how many cards are going to come into play. There's a die that represents all 6 of the worlds. So you roll it. Maybe the red world gets the first card in space number, roll a die, 3. So you're going to put a dusk card in that world at space 3. You do that like 5 or 6 times, or 4 or 5 times, depending on the number of players you're playing. So cards are going to be completely filling up all these spots in the grid of hexagons, and you're going to run around and try to complete them. You can close rifts. You can do events. Most of the events have like a check that you do. You have a health stat and a spirit stat. When you do a check, it'll say like you need a 6. So you roll a d6, and then you get to spend spirit to offset the difference if you didn't get it. Some of the events make you spend the spirit first and then roll a die. So it's like a gamble. it'll give you things. And the primary reason you're doing all this is because you have 3 energy bars, red, blue, and green. And the different monsters and the different scenarios in closing rifts are all going to give you energy. And in a PvP, what you want to do is get all 3 of those to 10 and then get back to the dojo and you win the game. In PvE, there's a lot of different scenarios. There's like, if I had to guess, there's at least 12 to 15. I can't remember exactly, but I think there's 6 characters, and each character has like 2 scenarios at least. So it's at least 12, and I think there's a couple more than that maybe. But basically, it has its own win conditions. A lot of them will say that you need to have max energies, all 3 energies, and then do something to the boss or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios. All the scenarios are rated for different amount of players. So there's some 2+, there's some solo. Not that many solos, but there's a lot of 2+, obviously. And then there's 3 different main bad guys. They're called Corrupted. Right? Yeah, they're called Corrupted. Mm-hmm. They used to be called Afflicted, I think, in the prototype. Well, anyway, the Corrupted, they're huge, chunky models. They're 3 to 3.5 inches tall. They're really cool. And they have like this huge card that tells you how they react, or how they act. And basically at the end of a day, or at the end of the player's actions, the boss will go, you roll a die, and it simply chooses one of the 3 behaviors that they have. So it's like rolling a D3, you do a move 1, 2, or 3, and they act differently for each of the bosses, or Corrupted. And then it depends on the scenario you're playing, but you finish the scenario, you beat the game or whatever. There is a little bit of progression. We did not do this at all, but some of the progression is, I also should mention that each character gets an ultimate ability once they hit 10 of their primary color. So the character that I like to play, well, the second character that I like to play is Leaf. And he has green energy, like that's his primary. So when he hits 10, I get his ultimate. But everybody has like passives and stuff like that you can get. But the idea is you play through a story arc, you complete that scenario, it unlocks your passive ability, and now you can play the game with that character's passive. There's nothing that stops you from just including the passives. If you're playing PvP, everyone really needs to have it, I guess, or not has it. And then, but other than that, you can just do whatever you want. You just play a scenario, you can play a story arc, which brings us to the point where we are going to say, play one game, not necessarily a story arc, unless you have a lot of time, because it is a rather lengthy game. It's like, it says 30 minutes per player. So if you're doing a story arc with 4 players, it's like 6 hours or
more.
1, 2, 3. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, probably about 6 hours, I would say. It's rather long. But I don't know. Let's take a vote. PvE or PvP?
Well, we know the answer to this.
The answer is PvP. I'm sorry, PvE. Whoa.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think any of us really cared for the PvP at all.
Did you two? I tried to think of this. Why?
Like, why do it?
Why? What's wrong with it's the same game?
Well,
but what is the difference to make us not like it?
The boss.
The boss. That's what I was wondering. The boss.
The only difference is well, you take out the P versus P, where really the only reason you're gonna kind of go after each other is if you see someone low and you're just going in there, last hitting them, getting their 2 energy, and they lose 2 energy. They go back, they respawn, so they don't get a big detriment, but you lose the big aspect of more puzzly working together to defeat this boss and kind of working that out together.
Right. I did kind of liken this game slightly to Mage Knight in the idea of you have like a small amount of cards, but like 50 million things you could do. Because you're like, I could go over here and not as much as Mage Knight, but it is still a lot of options.
Because you want to maximize your turn.
You want to maximize your turn, yeah. Because if you just move 2 spaces and do nothing, it does not feel good. But if you move 2 spaces, kill a dude, open a rift portal, and then move away, I mean, that so much stuff just happened. But you have to plan it out in the right way, and all the characters have their different specials. Like Thomas has those runes, and like his abilities can be powered by those runes, but they're hard to get back. Whereas like Leaf had I drew a blank. What did I have? Momentum, yeah. So when I got momentum, certain cards became free because I have a lot of momentum, so I've got it built up or whatever. Usually it's like movement and stuff like that, or I can heal. So I thought that was really cool. Some of the other characters have pets and stuff.
No, all the characters are great. They all seem completely different from each other.
Yeah.
Which it might take you a little bit to find a character you like. Like I did not like, was it James? Is that the steampunk guy that I just played? Thomas.
Yeah.
I did not care for him. The two characters I played before with the pets, though, I really enjoyed both of them. So
yeah, I like Thomas. I probably should have moved away from him instead of playing him a bunch of times, but he's good in PvE. I did not like him so much in PvP. Like I felt like his abilities are really cool because one of the things is in the game, you can, when it's not your turn, like I can move up and try to fight this guy, but I can ask for assistance from somebody else and I give them one of my activations because maybe I don't have a damage card to activate from a third card. But Thomas is usually, if you keep him in the right positioning, he's somewhere he can shoot. He's basically Mega Man, steampunk Mega Man.
yeah.
So, it's good. But I did like Leaf better, even though he does not really have any range. He's like usually hitting in the space he's in or one space away. Not that Thomas has a lot more than that, but I mean, it felt like he did.
Yeah, he was 1 or 2, and I think you could do the rune thing to get 3.
Yeah. So as you're playing the game and you get your energy, if you reach 5 of a color, you get to choose. Each character has 2 red, 2 blue, and 2 green abilities. So when you hit 5 of a color, you get to choose one of those 2 abilities to include. So it's cool because each character, as you play each game, you can customize slightly as you're playing it.
Right.
Think League of Legends style. That's the easiest way I can kind of recommend it because each character has its own play style and it's different cards, but you really don't have that many abilities because you only start with 4 cards and at most you have like 9. You have your 4, you get 4 more, or sorry, you have 4, you get 3 more, which is 7.
And then maybe an ultimate or
and
whatever.
then your ultimate, what is pretty much one shot. So
I would say you can get your ultimate more than once in a game because you also get it usually on a timeline as well, like end of
Day
Dusk
3.
of 3 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is possibilities of getting it twice.
But to go back to your PvP comment, I feel like when it's a game that's a lot of, I mean, not that this game is a lot of fighting each other, even in PvP, it's a lot of playing the game. It is a lot of capitalizing on people who are low on health. So it's, if you're familiar with League, it's almost like everybody's jungling and waiting, and they're fighting the game and waiting for somebody to be low health and then snipe them like eBay. I don't know.
Basically.
That was like okay to me. Like if we were playing teams, which we haven't done, we have not played teams in this, right?
Not that I remember.
We haven't played teams, and I've never played it 2 players. I think 2 players PvP could be competitive enough.
Sure, it could be.
In teams.
I will also say, not that we did it, but if you keep on bashing it out, then the game could go forever. Because every time you kill your opponent, they lose 2, you get 2, but if they come back, they go back after you. You just keep on bashing it out together. You're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know if it would ever get down to just that point unless you're being purposeful.
Right.
But it would be more beneficial to you just to like scare them off and go do something else and wait for them to be low health and then come back.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. So the PvP was okay. I mean, it's interesting that it's in there, and I think that it would be nice to try it 2 players, which we just don't play a lot of 2-player games, first off. So it's not like we go out our way to do it. But I am kind of disappointed we did not try teams. That would actually be kind of neat because then you could plan a lot of stuff, especially if you played where like your opponent is or your partner is across the table from you. So there's no secretive stuff. Or it might be cool to be secretive because then you can gank.
Yeah.
Which is a League term. But the reason I like the PvP or PvE way better is simply for the fact that, one, the scenario adds a lot of differences to the game. The bosses that are in the Corrupted, they have their own unique style. Although I will say the only thing in this is kind of one thing they did in Folklore is that it's not behavioral based abilities. You just roll a die and see which ability happens.
Right.
So each ability has a 33% chance of happening. It would almost be cooler if it had like I don't know. This isn't really a hit against the game. I'm just saying I really like games like the D&D adventure games where it's like its ability is, you know, say it's an archer, right? If there's anybody real close to it, it's going to run away. If there is a person within 2 spaces of it, it's going to shoot them first. Otherwise, if there's no one within a close distance, it's going to target a healer at a distance away.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because it gives them some sort of goal,
Right.
and not just randomly trying to do stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I mean, the characters in the game, the bosses did actually kind of work pretty well. It just would be nice to be like, oh, well, I can't be real close to it because it's going to do this.
A little bit more dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still kind of randomize it, but it's neat to see that they have some sort of behavioral and not just like doing whatever is fate has them do.
Right.
But otherwise, the scenarios are really different from each other, and I think they're pretty good.
Yeah, I would also like to see a couple more different events and actually the events that come out and also the events that come out on the table as well. You know, go to them. They're usually you get a certain energy and you have to roll, and they all seem kind of similar. I would like to see a little bit different. You know, instead of seeing the same kinds of stuff over and over.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I mean, I guess that's not like the focus of the game because there's so many events that happens, but it would be cool if there was a little bit differences going on.
Mm-hmm.
And
also the game events were really similar as well that came out.
yeah, it would be cool if the dusk, or what was it, the world shift deck where like the worlds actually shift around.
Mm-hmm.
Those were pretty cool. In PvE or PvP, it really can mess you up because you can be low health and be like right next to the dojo and away from everybody. And then it'll move you real close to everyone else and you just get ganked and die.
Right.
So that's another reason why I think the PvP was like, it's interesting because it's not like you want to go straight after somebody. You almost just want to be the cleanup crew,
Mm-hmm.
run around like janitors, cleaning up people with low health. So I don't know. When I'm coming from a player base that is like highly competitive in War Machine, so I like one-on-one competitive PvP stuff. I'm like when you get into the board games, it's kind of like I really like either the cooperative stuff or the PvP elements aren't so in your face or no, I like in your face, but I don't like the risk style combat where player A fights player B. Player A wins, but now has like no army, and the player C comes in and is like,
Cleans up.
here's my mop. So anyway, what did you all think of the miniatures? Because that's new.
Yeah.
We had
definitely.
standees in the beginning.
standees.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job.
Yeah.
Miniatures look good. I like the player boards with the inlaid, spots for all your cubes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little touch. And the fact that the board was two-sided, because I didn't really care for one side, but if you don't like that side, put it on the other one.
Oh yeah. Cause like one side's really busy. The
Yes.
other side is very just kind of bland.
More muted.
Well, muted, not bland, but I think it looks nice. And you don't really care what's in those spaces anyway. You care about the cards that are sitting on top of it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, I like that.
But the miniatures, yes, very, very nice. The corrupted.
The corrupted are awesome.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't paint a lot of games, but I'll probably paint this because Ashura, is that her name? Ashura?
Close enough. It was pretty,
Asura?
yeah,
Asura?
something like that.
I don't know. The girl with a big sword, she is awesome. That is probably my favorite miniature out of all of them. And they're all pretty decent.
Yeah.
But man, she's really cool. Like that could be a League of Legends character right there. It's okay. Once you get to your dojo. It probably is.
Yeah. Or,
Kind of like
came from
Riven.
one. Right.
But yeah, I don't know. It's a cool game. It seems like there's a lot of rules, but when you start playing it, it almost seems like it's not really that deep.
It's just a lot of phases, I guess. And
Yeah.
kind of like a lot of maintenance
Well,
kind of deal.
Once you get into it, you don't feel like it's overly complicated or anything, so it runs pretty smoothly.
Yeah.
I will say that I probably do recommend it at 2 or 3 players because just the length of the game for us, it took us a while, so it kind of overstays welcome a little bit because just how long it took us, and that's why I would recommend maybe not for the full 4-player experience.
The times that we have played it with 3, I think I did enjoy more than 4.
Mm-hmm.
I'll agree with that.
Yeah. And
you only have 3 actions in your turn, but I guess just because of planning and, you're trying to not just plan for this turn, but you have that ability to kind of, put down cards or pick up cards and plan for next turn.
And sometimes you are planning and someone takes a guy that you were
That's
they're going and getting. So
you have to
replan and everything.
Yeah, that's a big thing about playing with 4 players is so much could change by the time it's your turn that you're just like, I don't even feel like figuring this out until it's my turn.
To me,
right. Whereas in like Mage War or Mage Knight, you might be on a different route than somebody else, and there's like no way people are going to interfere with you. Mm-hmm. So you can plan out your turn, and you almost need that much time to plan your turn.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sucks when you're playing Champions and you're like, I'm going to do this and this. And then the other players move around and kill it.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the combat?
Combat for the monsters?
No, for the player combat. Against
player
the
versus player?
So just to detail it real quick. Well, yeah. So just to detail it, basically at the end of your turn, if you're anywhere near the range of a monster's card, it's going to hit you for straight damage. You just move your health marker down.
Mm-hmm.
On your turn, when you're moving around, you're actually going to spin your activations to play cards to do damage to it. It has a health amount. If you do that much health, it dies.
All right. It's all deterministic where you know exactly what you're going to hit it for.
Exactly. There's no random rolls and stuff like that for the combat. And they have abilities. And I think the abilities by far, even though there's only 5 abilities, they work out really well.
Yeah, sure. I like them.
Yeah. Aggressive just allows you to, like, if you move on top of it, it just instantly does damage to you. Whatever the one that does the parting blows.
Dangerous.
Dangerous. I just kept calling it parting blow because I thought it was cool.
Mm-hmm.
So if you kill it, it does its damage to you. There is
armored.
Yep, armored. So you can't hit it at ranged unless you have to be on top of it.
And there is crit.
Oh yeah, crit. That was actually cool. The way they utilize it on certain cards, where it's like I do no damage, but if I hit my crit, the person to your right basically just rolls a d6. If you roll a 5 or 6, their crit happens.
Mm-hmm. Usually it's additional damage, or it might do something else. One of them actually
healed.
Right, it actually benefited you.
Yeah, and so once you do the combat and you kill a character, or whatever, some of them will give you items. And this is a really cool part of the game.
I did like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But a part that gets sad after a while, too, because, like, the deck is labeled on the backsides 1 through, like, 30 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so you kill a guy, you get item number 15, and you bust out. You're like, yes, this is cool. So it's, like, determined items for the characters.
Right.
But if you are familiar with them...
You'll learn them after a while, probably.
Yeah, you'll learn them.
I don't see that as a bad thing necessarily. You're like, I want to go get
I
this
think Tim just
like
the surprise though of seeing it for the first time.
I was kind of talking about like if you're playing it with new players and you're doing PvP.
Mm-hmm.
Some people might know exactly what items there are where on the board because the monster gives it.
Do some metagaming.
You can metagame it. Yeah. I mean, I don't
like if I get this thing, it'll go good with this character. Let me just go to that world, run around, try and pull it out real quick.
Yeah. I don't explicitly remembering it saying you can't look through the item deck. But I would assume that you probably don't want to because it is the art of surprise. And it's cool because you look at the character or the monster you're fighting and it usually drops something that's very similar to what it is.
Yeah.
Dude's wielding a big sword. I hope I get that big sword.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, highly recommend. I recommend it if you are a fan of MOBA style games. I think it does have that MOBA feel as a board game to a degree. So if you like that kind of style or the crazy stupid word Ameritrash, if you like the Ameritrash style combat games, this is definitely really good. It has a little bit of Euro combat because you're not rolling dice and stuff, but it is like a very cool what kind of game is this? What would you classify it as?
Oh, it's definitely a mix. I actually wouldn't say it very...
It's not like dudes on the map or anything, but it's like...
very Ameritrashy because it's not really luck-based. You already know everything you're going to
Yeah, there's like almost
into.
no luck in the game.
Mainly just the story fluff. I think it's the more Ameritrash part of it.
That's true.
If anything.
Yeah.
Story and theme.
I don't read story too much, so I apologize to people who are looking for a good story here. There is some story in the book, and they have an art book for the game that has a lot more story, I think, for each character and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much more in detail it goes. I don't think it does go into super detail on each character and everything, but...
Well, I think a lot of people also compared it to like Arkham Horror type of, you get that backstory and you're working through a campaign. So you get a lot of stories between all your missions.
People compared it to Arkham Horror?
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
in that aspect at least.
Oh, okay, I see.
In that story aspect, in the campaign.
I will say that
of it.
it's interesting they have a little bit of campaign stuff going on. It would have been cooler if that was fleshed out even more.
Mm-hmm.
That would be an amazing expansion to have.
Definitely. I would say if they did something like that, where, not only did you get another one of your alts or something, or unlocked your passive, but you were able to go through these campaigns and add, substantial cards to your deck already.
Yeah,
I would
or
like that a
actually
lot.
get gear.
Oh yeah, or get certain
that
gear
you keep from scenario to scenario and stuff.
Yeah. Right.
I think it'd be cool to flesh it out. Regardless, I would like to see if I had to say wishes for an expansion, probably more corrupted, because I think the corrupted, it kind of reminds me of Legendary, where you have a scenario, I can't remember what they're called in Legendary, but then you have a boss that you're playing against, and like the combination of those two could dramatically change that scenario and how difficult it is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I like that idea. So I like that there's scenarios, and some of them require the exact corrupted, but some of them require like you can play with any of them.
Mm-hmm.
So you can determine. There was a couple of things missing from the rule book, which is funny because I'm pretty sure that was the one was missing from the prototype, but it was like, where does a corrupted start in play if it doesn't say in the scenario? And I'm pretty sure we had that same question in the prototype, but we just were like, just roll the world dice and we'll put them there.
It worked good enough.
Yeah. Well, then we looked it up and that's exactly how it works out.
okay.
So
yeah,
it just is not in the book. But otherwise, I think everything, the rule book was pretty decent. Although I will say, okay, look, I do have one gripe about the rule book.
The color scheme.
No. Whatever.
Right.
The front of the book is kind of
muted. And blah.
Yeah, I would have liked it to be the front box art or something.
And the back of it looks like a Chinese restaurant menu.
My beef with the rule book is the setup. I did not like how it's laid out. It's all right. Setup. Here's the dojo. Here's 3 paragraphs about what the dojo is. So if you're quickly trying to go back and say, do we start with a Dreamstone? Or whatever.
Right.
Because the first time we played it, since we got the when we got the retail copy, I couldn't remember if you started with a Dreamstone after reading the rulebook. And so I was looking through and it's like, where is it? Because like the setup is literally like 8 pages or something. Not really, but
yeah.
I mean, it's
but
like
it's longer than it should have been.
it's not like 1 this, 2 this, 3 this.
Now
4.
you're ready to go. Here's
Right.
what the dojo does.
Yeah, it
Right.
explains too much. I think I don't necessarily believe that's a good way to write a rulebook. But other than that, it was fun to read through the rulebook the first time. It's not referenceable, I guess. But please don't take this as I want you to choose Fantasy Flight's method of ranking rulebooks.
Oh, where you have 2 rule books.
You have rules, and then you have like a reference manual. No, don't do that. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Don't do that. Please don't. But so not a big gripe. Just the rule book could have been referenced a little bit easier. So when you go back to look at it, or maybe on the back page, have like a quick menu of here's a quick way to set the game up, quick round, layout and stuff like that. So anyway, I recommend it. It's fun. It's got really cool miniatures.
Yep.
I'm definitely painting that one.
Mm-hmm.
So anything else?
No.
It's good.
Cool. And then that is Champions of Hara. Oh, by the way, amazing artist. Stephen Gibson is a man. He is literally the man. He does, I think, most of the graphic arts.
Oh,
He did it on Grimslingers, which I think he designed that game too, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
And he did all kinds of Greenbrier stuff at this point. I think did he work on Zpocalypse? Sorry, Steven. I totally am just off the cuff on this. I've had a baby. It's in 2 months, so I've been totally.
I didn't think he had done that one, but I could be wrong.
No, it doesn't really look like his stuff. but
Right.
I could
All
be
right.
wrong as well.
We like to give credit to artists, so let's look up Champions of Hara. Either way, I love his style.
Yeah.
Love it. I love his graphic art style. It's so good. What was this? Why was there another Champions Hara thing in here? Chaos on Hara. Did I not know about this? Is that an expansion? That's what I'm talking about. Huh. It's got miniatures and stuff. I'm going to have to look into that later. Anyway, I definitely recommend Champions of Hara. Final thoughts? Good?
Yeah,
Bam?
that's decent.
Cool. More items, campaign mode.
He did
Right.
folklore also.
Yes! Oh yeah. That makes more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, Champions of Hara.